Hello everyone. If you're watching this video, you either subscribed because you were interested in my story of my daughter, and you wanted to know more, or you just happened to stumble across this video after watching my other video. Basically, I would like to address a few things and answer a few questions because I go through 100 or more comments a day, filtering out those that I will actually post that are not vulgar or just incredibly attacking. But I think there are valid questions and valid concerns that should be brought up. So I want to start with some misinformation I've seen in a lot of comments. For the first part, my daughter Aquila died almost 10 years ago in December of 2019. So people think, oh, the video is 4 years old. Well, actually, there was a video posted maybe 3 years after her death, but it got flagged by my midwife, Faith Belts, and then removed from YouTube. And then I reposted it a few years after that. So I reposted it 4 years ago. And this video took off and was really getting circulated around, especially in the home birth community, which is where I wanted it to be circulated. Now, it was poorly put together because it was my first stab at it. I recently redid it and made a much better video, and it is also on my channel if you want to watch that one. So that video is more refined, it's slower, easier to follow, and a better video all around, but it just doesn't have the circulation, so it doesn't get shown as much as this the original video. But regardless, both of those videos are about an event that happened 10 years ago, not recently, and the climate around home birth and the information that was available was vastly different then than it is now. And I want to address various questions I have. One I see over and over again, which makes me laugh, is why I have a child that's black and a child that looks mixed. Well, because my ex-husband and I had his son from his previous relationship. That was my stepson. He was mixed. And then we had adopted my daughter, who is black. So I had 5 children together with him, but only 3 had I given birth to, and 1 I had adopted, and 1 was my stepson. So that also addresses another common comment I get with, if you have had 5 babies, you should know better. You've given birth 5 times, yada, yada, yada. I had not given birth 5 times. I had given birth 3 times. And 3 perfect, normal pregnancies, 1 with a midwife in the hospital, 2 home births with no complications whatsoever. So that brings me to another very common accusation that if I was high risk, I never should have home birth. And that is wildly inaccurate because I was nowhere near high risk. I was considered a primary candidate for home birth. I had 3 prior births with no complications. I had a perfectly healthy pregnancy, and people point out, well, my mom had an abruption, but number one, that does not make you high risk. It does not make you high risk with OBs, because I know, because I've given birth since then with OBs, with high risk OBs, and they do not care about my mother's birthing history at all. It's not even on the sheet. They care if my mother had ovarian cancer, but they say that it is not genetic. Placental abruption, it is not something that even was on their radar. Why I didn't consider it at all until I was in the middle of la la land of labor was because when my mother had told me about it, I was a child, and she had said it was during a hurricane, and she had said that hurricanes cause abruptions. And so in my head, it was only happened because she was in a hurricane. So, and it had been talked about when I was a kid and not really discussed as an adult. And it just popped into my head the way weird things pop into your head, because I saw blood and I thought, is this an abruption? And said my mom had an abruption, and Faith just, my midwife just blew it off like nothing. She didn't comment on me saying that. She didn't even she didn't think that was a factor either. And I have not had one caregiver who has thought my mother having an abruption was a factor in my own labors. So I just want to start with that important fact that I was not high risk. I was low risk. I was absolutely a prime candidate for home birth. And most people I know who have lost babies at home births were low risk, and that's just the sad fact. So people want to know why I'm blaming the midwife when there was a doula and a photographer and my husband there. Well, for starters, a doula is not a medical professional. It is not her job to make calls at all. She was not there for that capacity. She was there to rub my back and play music for me and help me through hard contractions. It was not her job to, in any way, shape, or form, be my medical advisor. Same for the photographer. The photographer was just taking pictures. That was her job. She did not know anything was going wrong until Aquila came out not breathing. She had no idea whatsoever. She testified at the hearings that were against my midwife later, and that was her testimony, that she had no idea that anything was going bad. So people asking why she continued snapping photos when everything was going bad is because the midwife didn't seem bothered. So everyone else took cues from her, thinking that everything was okay, and the reason we were transferring when we started to get dressed was because I was in so much pain, not because something was wrong. And again, a photographer is not a medical professional. Why my husband didn't do something or know something was wrong, well, you'd have to talk to him. I'm not married to him anymore, so really I can't speak for him or why he did or didn't do things. But that brings me to the biggest point, which is over and over again, everyone says it's my fault because I didn't listen to my intuition. But I want you to think about breaking your leg and having the flu at the same time, and then asking yourself to make important medical decisions about yourself. And it's 10 times worse than that when you're in labor, but add that to that contractions that don't stop, then you have a perfect storm for not being able to make any coherent decisions. It took me 30 minutes to get from upstairs to outside because I could not move because the contractions wouldn't stop, and they kept just peaking over and over again, and I could not, stepping into my clothes was just absolutely torture. It was so hard to move, and we were trying to go as fast as we could, but when you're in that much pain, it's very difficult, and I had a fever, so I was completely delusional. So yeah, people want to blame me, and I was blaming myself a lot in the beginning until the day my midwife brought by my records a month after I gave birth, and I read the lies that she put into those records to cover her butt. She changed the records grossly from what had actually happened in order to make herself not look culpable, and that changed my whole perspective because I was not blaming her. I was blaming myself for the first month, absolutely. And then when I read her records, I realized how much she had messed up and how badly she had messed up, and that made me scared for the other mothers that she was seeing, and it made it my mission to make sure that people understood what she had done wrong. And I tried through many channels, which I will post another video about all the different hearings, etc. that happened. But this video is here to help protect the public because I don't think people ever hear the bad home birth stories. I hear them. People come to me all the time and tell me about their baby that died, or their baby that now has brain damage, or the mom who died because they chose to home birth. But I had never heard a bad story ever when I was preparing for my home birth. So I am putting this out there and letting myself get kicked multiple times a day so that I can protect other mothers. And frankly, it's working. I have people message me, email me constantly that they changed their decision to home birth based on my video, and I'm glad because my daughter would be alive if I had birthed in the hospital, but I didn't know that I was taking a risk. I did not know. So some other questions I've seen, have I had more babies, and were they in the hospital? Have I learned my lesson? First off, it's so rude to ask someone if they've learned their lesson. It's just straight up mean. When I'm very clearly posting this to warn other people, it says in the description, it says in my comments that I'm warning people against home births. So obviously I have not had another home birth. That was 10 years ago, and I have had other babies since then, and I plan to post another video to tell you about what has happened in my life since then, a more happy video about how good God is and how good my life is, and even though we miss Aquila so much, I have so much to be thankful for anyways. and my babies have been born in the hospital. I actually go for planned inductions because I don't even want to labor at home. I want to have everything in a controlled environment for the safety of my babies. And in my case, after my history, it's just not safe for me to even labor at home. So I go into the hospital at 38 or 39 weeks, depending on what's going on with baby, and they induce me and I deliver there. So I am very pro hospital birth now, yes. And the biggest one I get is that I need to just forgive and let go. Well, let me tell you what. And number one, you don't tell a grieving mother that, because that's not for your decision to make. That's not for you to judge them. But God has been gracious to me. I totally have forgiven Faith. That does not mean that if I saw her open up her midwifery practice again, that I would not be shouting from the rooftops, do not hire this woman. It is not about forgiveness. It's about protection of other mothers and babies, because this care provider is incompetent and should not be delivering babies, period. Do I forgive my own not knowing and my own lack of education and my choices to home birth? Yes, I do. And that's why I want to educate other mothers so that they don't have to carry that guilt and that burden. But I have forgiven myself. I have forgiven Faith. I walk in joy daily. I do not sit around crying and wallowing in this. I know I'll see my baby in heaven, and that is a good thing. And it is a bad thing that she had to leave so soon, but I'm making the best of it and trying to make her life matter and trying to get her story out there. So thank you so much if you have subscribed and you are following along with her story. And thank you if you're sharing this to get the word out so that people know the risks and the dangers. I really appreciate that. And please do subscribe if you want to hear more about my birth since then. And I plan to tell you what happened to my midwife, what the legal courses of action that were taken, and I plan to tell you some other stories about home births and risks and what I have learned since then. So please subscribe and like this video, share it, please, to get the word out. Thank you so much.